Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes running fast if you're the Car Chick. Now, here she is.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Straight Shift podcast. I need to apologize for the near 3-month hiatus that I had to take, but despite taking every precaution and hardly ever leaving my house because I work from here anyway, I still got COVID, and it was bad. I will have to say it was very, very bad. 0 stars. Do not recommend. Avoid at all costs. And it has taken me a while to recover from that. And I'm pretty much back to normal. I still have some lung damage, so I'm going to try to get through this podcast without coughing, but I make no promises on that. But another thing that is taking a long time to recover from COVID is the automotive industry. And we had so many challenges last year with the production shutdowns and the demand shortages that quickly moved to a supply shortage. And we thought, okay, 2021, this is going to be the time for the automotive industry to recover, get production back up to normal, get their inventory levels back up to normal. And hey, it's going to be a really fun and exciting year to sell cars. Yeah, so that really is not working out like that. So we're not out of this pandemic, both from a health situation, from a getting life back to normal situation, but definitely not from the automotive industry's perspective. So today I want to talk about what's going on and how that's going to affect you if you are going to be shopping for a vehicle in 2021. In a nutshell, we have a massive inventory shortage worldwide. Dealers are running out of new cars, trucks, and SUVs fast. I'm talking dealers who normally have 400 new cars on their lot at any given time. Maybe, if they're super lucky, have half of that right now. One of my very best dealers that I do a lot of business with here in Charlotte, she normally has 400 cars on her lot. Right now, she has 80 cars, total, new and used. The lots are empty. And the dealers are doing a good job of kind of spacing them out, moving cars that normally they would be stockpiling on the far back lot, because the inventory that they normally keep, you don't see all of those cars. They have a back lot. It's like they're the dealer equivalent of a storage closet, and they're all back there behind the dealership, stacked up, and you don't see them, and they move them to the front of the lot as cars sell. Well, if you go behind the building of a dealership right now, there's no cars. It's empty, and they have everything out front or in their showrooms, and they're spreading them out, and they're trying to make it look like they have a bunch of cars. They don't. They're doing what they can to make the best of a bad situation, but a lot of them really are kind of in a state of panic right now because they don't have cars to sell. Their prospects for getting new cars to sell are not good. And quite frankly, they're worried about their salespeople who get paid only when they sell cars. And if there's no cars to sell, these people are not going to get paid. And that's going to hurt a lot of people that work very hard in this industry. So lots of concerns, shall we say, in the automotive industry with the dealerships, from the big franchise dealers all the way down to your little mom and pop shops. And it's even worse for the SUVs and the pickup trucks. Seriously, most Chevy stores right now only have a handful, and I mean a handful, of Silverados, Tahoes, and Suburbans on the ground. And I'm talking like 2 or 3 as opposed to the 50 or more that they normally have. And the auto executives and dealers they really came into 2021 super psyched and hoping to restock their dealerships because the inventories got depleted last year. But instead, we've got part shortages and other factors that are disrupting production and extending that inventory crunch and making it worse. And it is likely going to get worse before it gets better. And it may be this time next year, 2022, before everything kind of starts to shake out and starts to approach anything that we would consider normal in the automotive industry. So why the heck is this happening? Why is there such a shortage of new cars? My last podcast that I did before I got sick was talking about the global shortage of computer chips. And this has not improved since I went on my hiatus. I didn't come back from recovering from COVID and woohoo, computer chips galore. Nope, it's getting worse. So let me just recap quickly the production shutdowns last year. All the automakers had to shut down plants for a period of time at some point last year to try and protect their people from COVID. Whether it was government mandated or it was something they chose to do themselves, trying to protect their people. The supply of microchips that they normally would have gotten from their microchip suppliers, those got reallocated because they're like, we can't take any chips right now because our plant shut down. And so the semiconductor suppliers said, yeah, okay, the consumer electronics industry is chomping at the bit to get more. We're going to move the ones that we allocated to you guys and sell them to them instead. And furthermore, there was increased demand from the hospitals for medical equipment because ventilators, all of the equipment in our hospitals requires computer chips. Everything in our society now requires computer chips and lots of them. And of course, we all got new phones and iPads and laptops, computers and game consoles, anything to, stay on Zoom, stay connected, and to keep ourselves entertained while we were spending a great deal of time at home last year. So the consumer electronics industry increased demand, medical industry increased demand. So it was just this whole big mess. Our trade war with China, of course, didn't help, nor did the big fire that happened earlier this year at one of the big electronics chip factories in Japan. It's just been this perfect storm of events that has culminated in this massive shortage of computer chips. And again, it's not going to be ending anytime soon because you can't just ramp up production of microchips easily. It takes billions of dollars of investments to open a plant, and they take 2 years to build, especially in places that actually have environmental protection laws, because the production of microchips isn't the most environmentally friendly production. And so this is why a lot of them are in China, because they don't have as strict environmental laws as we do. But if you're an investor, talk to your financial advisor because it's possibly a good time to be investing in companies that are building microchips. And certainly students who are majoring in that particular development field are probably going to have some phenomenal job opportunities when they graduate. So here's an opportunity in the industry. But on top of the lack of computer chips, we've seen some other crazy stuff happen this year. Remember those insane winter storms that slammed Texas? Well, those disrupted the production of plastics. There are a lot of petrochemical industries in Texas, obviously, because they produce a lot of petrol, oil, and plastics are made, they are a byproduct of petrol. So it makes sense that a lot of petrol products, plastics, etc., are also manufactured in Texas. Well, guess what those are used for? Seat foam for these seats in cars and other materials that are used in the interior of vehicles produced in Texas. Well, that got disrupted. So guess what? Nobody can put seats in cars right now. They're trying to recover from that. Add insult to injury, there's still a backup at a lot of the U.S. ports, especially on our West Coast. The California ports are still struggling. And there's literally dozens of container ships from Asia where a lot of our vehicle parts and other important parts that in products that we live on here are produced. And those container ships are literally sitting anchored off the coast of California, waiting for clearance from the port and from customs officials so they can dock and unload all of their goodies that we need. Then, if you remember in March, the Suez Canal got blocked. That stopped the shipment of components destined for the European automakers that serve the US market. There's even a shortage of shipping containers themselves over in Asia that's affecting the ability to put the parts that are produced into containers and ship them over here to our factories. It's absolutely ridiculous. I hope you can see just how intertwined our global economies are. What happens in one place affects everybody else. It's like a tapestry. You pull on one thread and the whole thing can unravel. And that's why it's affecting every single auto manufacturer: Volkswagen, Nissan, General Motors, Toyota, Subaru, Honda, BMW. It doesn't matter. Everybody is feeling this, and it's going to continue to get worse. Meanwhile, of course, our demand for cars has not slowed whatsoever. Car buyers are snapping up every vehicle that is on the lot. We're still looking at buying new cars, between the economic stimulus and, covering, and people realizing, maybe vacations are going to be more driving places than flying places for a while. We still want cars. There's just not as many cars to buy. So that's continuing to tighten up that whole inventory situation. And it's just I think it is going to get worse before it gets better. So one of the interesting things that the manufacturers are doing that kind of surprised me that they can do this, and I'm a little worried about it, but since they can't get the computer chips, they've been still trying to produce the rest of the vehicle, and then they're parking those cars on their own lots, waiting for the computer chips and other supplies that they need to come in, and then they'll finish building those cars. They're kind of doing everything they can to try and be creative and get ahead of the supply chain problem. But one of the challenges that automakers face is most of them have followed in the German automakers' footsteps. One of the things I was always really impressed with BMW, I was able to tour their plant down in Spartanburg, which is only a couple hours from where I live. And they have what's called just-in-time manufacturing. And that means that they don't stock up on parts and keep them in warehouses. The parts they need to build the car arrive literally just in time as that car is coming across the production line so that they can grab that part and stick it in the car. They're not warehousing parts. So while that saves them a lot of money and it's a much more efficient manufacturing process, it all goes to hell in a handbasket when there is a glitch in that just-in-time supply chain. So all the automakers have really gone to that over the past several years, and now it's coming back to bite them in the butt, and it's pretty much grinding a lot of our plants to an absolute halt. And so much so that GM and Ford and a few other plants have actually shut down completely over the past couple of weeks because they can't get the supplies. They don't have the supplies to build these cars. And this is really going to affect their bottom line and their profit margin for the whole year. GM is estimating that the lost production could potentially hurt them by as much as $2 billion this year. Ford's saying probably $2.5 billion. And one of the reasons those companies are getting hit harder than others is because their biggest profit center are pickup trucks. We love pickup trucks. The rest of the world is starting to import pickup trucks. That has always been the biggest profit center for Ford and GM. And the pickup trucks are getting really super high tech. And as a result, they're not able to get the computer chips necessary for that tech. So they are really going to be hurting for the production of the pickup trucks as well as the larger SUVs. So this isn't just affecting the U.S. automakers, and it's not just affecting the automakers with plants in the United States, which most of them have. It's also affecting auto production in Europe. It's affecting auto production in Asia. It's even affecting it in China, where the chips are produced in the first place. It's crazy. China is actually the largest car market in the world. The demand for cars over there is just insane. Last year, they sold over 25 million vehicles over there. And a lot of their vehicles that they buy come from GM. China is GM's largest market, not the United States. Same thing for Volkswagen, a lot of the other European manufacturers. So even though the computer chips are made in China, they would have to go to GM, produce them, even producing them at the plants in China to be sold then to the buyers in China. It's still disrupted because of the supply chain for those computer chips, and things like the seat foam still may come from the plant in Texas. So again, we have a truly global market, a global economy, and a global supply chain that is completely screwed up right now. It's also affecting the rental car companies because they can't get cars for their fleets. They went from having an excess of cars last year when travel came to a screeching halt with the pandemic, and the rental car companies just had all of their cars just sitting on their lots and literally sitting in fields wherever they could find to warehouse them while the world was at a standstill. And a lot of the rental companies sold off their cars because as the demand to purchase vehicles picked up, travel was still highly restricted. And so the rental car companies, just to keep from going bankrupt, they couldn't rent their cars. So they just sold off their fleets to dealers to sell them as gently used pre-owned cars. But now there's an increased demand because we're opening up a little bit. We're starting to travel again. But now the rental car companies cannot replenish their fleets. So right now, if you want to try and rent a car, good luck. And I recommend planning ahead. And if you know you're going to need a rental car several months from now, book it now. Get that reservation in now, because the rental car fleets are going to have just as much trouble replenishing their supplies as our car dealers. So I have a couple clients right now who unfortunately were in accidents where their vehicle was totaled. And even though their insurance company will happily pay for a rental, there aren't rentals to pay for. So they are having to borrow cars from friends and family because they can't get a rental. It's really crazy. So this is what's going on in the new car world. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what's happening in the used car world, and then what does all of this mean for car buyers in 2021, and what strategies can you use if you still want to get a car and get a good deal in 2021. So I'll be right back after this. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of or about finding the right car at a great price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 704-248-8706. That's 704-248-8706. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Nice to meet you. Love your asphalt.
Hey, nice treads.
It's Straight Shift with the Car Chick.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Straight Shift. We're talking about car buying in 2021 and how this whole ridiculous, unprecedented, abysmal inventory situation is affecting dealers, rental car companies, the whole industry, and most importantly, how it's going to affect you if you want to buy a car in 2021. Since the supply of new cars is at historic record lows, a lot of people are shifting their demand to looking at, okay, I'll consider a gently used model. Well, okay, so the demand for the gently used cars is going up, but the supply of them is not plentiful either. So the inventory crunch is affecting the used car market as well. And the dealers are having trouble sourcing used cars for their lots. A lot of your, what I call gently used or barely used cars come from things like lease turn-ins. People get to the end of their lease after 3 years, they turn that car in. the franchise dealers get first dibs on those cars, and they are gobbling them up like crazy. But a lot of people are not necessarily turning in their leased cars. Some people extended their leases. Some people are choosing to buy out their lease because they do see that there is a shortage of new cars. So like, well, maybe I'll just hang on to this one for a while and wait till the situation gets better. Or maybe they've placed an order for their new car, but it's not here yet. So they have either bought out their lease temporarily or have worked out a new contract agreement with the manufacturer's leasing company to extend and be able to keep the car that they have for a while longer. So there aren't as many leased cars getting turned in. They buy from the rental car fleets, which we've already said there aren't any. So they're not getting those cars. And it's just this, again, perfect storm of lack of inventory, and the used cars, people are just gobbling them up like crazy. So you go to the auctions now and it's slim pickings. I'll tell you what, whether it's the dealers looking at the online auctions that are directly from the captive finance companies, those are mainly off lease auctions, or whether you actually physically go to the dealer auctions, it's like a ghost town there, and all the dealerships are having a terrible time. The small dealerships especially are having trouble because they don't have access to those special auctions that are for the franchise dealers only. The franchise dealers have the most access to used car inventory because of their franchise relationship with the auto manufacturers and their captive finance companies. So your independent dealers have to source their cars from elsewhere. And your companies like Carvana, CarMax, Vroom, all the online dealers, and your larger independent dealerships that have massive purchasing power, they get a lot of cars normally from the rental fleets, and those are just not there. So they are flat out desperate. And at the auctions they are allowed to buy cars from, they're gobbling them up, and the prices have absolutely gone through the roof. And then that makes it even more difficult for your franchise dealers that are trying to buy more and more used cars, and especially for the smaller mom and pop dealerships. They are really, really hurting right now. And I suspect some of them may not survive this year because they simply cannot buy the cars. So, what does this mean for car buyers, car shoppers, all of you folks that want to buy cars in 2021? Well, first of all, if you see something you want, you are going to have to jump on it, and fast. Inventory is moving at lightning speed. I don't know if any of you are in the real estate industry or have been watching the real estate market, or maybe you're selling your home or you're looking to buy a home. The real estate market is in a very similar situation. They have supply chain problems. So new houses and apartment complexes that are planning to be built, their costs are higher, and they're having trouble getting things like lumber, the supplies that they need. So it's really interesting how these two industries, both of which are the top, most important industries in our economy, are having very, very similar problems. So I was having coffee. I actually went out, I left my house, and I had an in-person meeting with another human being at a coffee shop because I'm enjoying having my antibodies for COVID for a few more weeks anyway until I can get a vaccine. But it was kind of weird going out into the world again and meeting with people in person. It was very strange. I've gotten very comfortable with this whole Zoom thing, but it was nice to see another person in person. But she's a realtor, a friend of mine, and we were just commiserating over the inventory situation and how fast inventory is moving. Houses go on the market and they have 30 offers for over asking price in 24 hours. While there's not the same kind of bidding wars that happen in the car industry, inventory is moving that quickly. So if you see a car that you want, you're going to have to jump on it, and you're probably going to have to jump on it faster than you would normally like. Because you know me, if you've been listening to me for any amount of time, you know I preach buying a car is a process, not an event. And you need to take your time and do your diligence, especially when you're shopping for a used car. But the challenge is the inventory is moving too fast right now to do the level of diligence that I want to do for my clients and that I preach that you should do when shopping for used cars on your own. And it's just tough. The dealers are not necessarily taking a deposit to hold the car. They won't hold a car for you to, order that pre-purchase inspection. You may have to ask them, hey, can I pick it up and immediately take it over to the shop and get a pre-purchase inspection and then bring it back? See if they're willing to do that. Because if you order one through the Lemon Squad, it takes a couple days, but boom, that car may be sold. So I'm struggling with this as well and having to kind of shift how I'm buying cars and approaching the process for my clients, because this is truly an unprecedented condition in our industry right now. So here's some things that you might need to do. You may need to buy out of state or outside your city, outside your geography, whether you're looking for a new or a used car. Normally, when I'm shopping for new cars and one of our local dealers doesn't have exactly what we want, maybe they just don't have the colors. They have the model and the trim level we want, but we really want a black one instead of a white one. And so the dealers normally trade inventory all the time. And so I can get one of my local dealers to say, yeah, I can do a dealer trade and get you what you need and still get you a ridiculously good price. Well, the dealers are not motivated. They're not as willing to trade inventory with each other because, quite frankly, they don't have anything to trade. They're still getting some of that done, but you have to have an exact same vehicle, the same trim levels in your inventory, and hopefully not in some weird color that's not popular, that they would be willing to trade because they're hoarding what little inventory they have. So if you don't find what you want on one of your local lots, and they can't do a dealer trade for you, then you're going to have to get on the phone, get on the internet, and start calling the dealers outside your geography, 2 hours away, 3 hours away, maybe even 4 hours away, in order to find what you're looking for. And be prepared, you're going to have to pay a little bit more. The dealers are not necessarily going to give you a rock bottom deal because they know that it is a seller's market. I've been lucky. I've still been able to get a lot of really good deals, but it's because of my relationship with these dealers and the volume of business that I bring them over time. They still want to stay on my good side. But, with the used cars too, we're not seeing the discounts. They're not discounting the cars. The price that they put on their website, the price they put on the sticker on the car in their lot, that's the price that they're going to get. You may be able to dicker with them for a few $100, but they may already be losing money on that car. One of my used car managers told me that because the prices at auction are so high for the used cars, they are so far what we call out of book, meaning the prices are thousands of dollars above what the book values, which take time to catch up and usually aren't terribly accurate anyway. They're going for thousands of dollars more than what Black Book or Kelley Blue Book wholesale values say they should go for, that you'd think the dealers would just buy them at that high price and then mark them up, and guess what? You as a consumer get to pay that astronomically higher price. But here's the wrench in that actually helps you as a consumer. The banks, because most people finance cars, there's a small percentage of the population that has the financial luxury of being able to pay cash for a car, and that's great. But most people have to finance a car, and most of them have to finance the whole thing. They don't have a 20% down payment. The banks will only loan a certain amount, and it's usually no more than 120% loan to value. And that value, they're looking at the book values, which are now several $1,000s lower than what the cars are actually selling for. So for the dealers to still sell those used cars that they paid through the nose for at the auction, they can't mark them up. Some of them are actually selling the cars retail for less than what they bought it for at auction because that's all they can get the bank to finance for people. So it's crazy. The dealers are literally buying used cars and selling them at a loss just to have something to sell. And they are trying to make up those losses in other areas, like all that stuff they want to sell you in the finance office, or they're putting the accessory protection packages, window tint, anything that they can throw on the car extra that they can then mark up a whole lot and charge you for above the price of the car. But even then they can only do that to a certain extent, because if you're trying to roll those costs into your loan, the bank will not roll in those costs. So you may have to pay for those in cash. So the dealers are literally, a lot of them are operating on the used car side anyway, at a loss right now, simply to have cars to sell. So it's so crazy. All of the normal rules in the automotive industry are being bent or just crumpled up and thrown out the window right now. So what should be some of your strategies? I mentioned you're probably going to have to shop outside your geography for a car, whether it's new or used, if you can't find one on the lot. But the challenge with buying a used car out of state, if you've listened to my podcast on how to do that, that involves ordering one of those pre-purchase inspections through a company like the Lemon Squad, which takes a few days. The car may sell before you can get the car inspected, and very often those inspection fees are not refundable. They might be nice and let you apply it to another used car that you find, but you may be out some money. Dealers that are willing to take a deposit to hold the car for you, you may have to give them $500 just for the luxury of being able to order that pre-purchase inspection. And if the inspection reveals something significant and you want to walk away from the car, you may have to be willing to forfeit that $500 to the dealer if they're not willing to fix whatever problem you found or the inspector found. It's just, the risk of buying a used car right now is a lot higher than it used to be. So you do have to be careful, and you may need to set aside a portion of your budget for that used car, and know that you may have to put some money into that car right away to make sure that it is, really good and really reliable for you. And I usually tell people, especially ones that are shopping in the under $10,000 price range, to do that anyway. But you may need to do that on a $30,000 used car. So it's just a different market because everything is moving so fast that we have to pull the trigger on cars more quickly than we would be normally comfortable doing, and have to give up a little bit of that due diligence, if we want to get that car, especially if you don't have the luxury of continuing to wait until that right one comes along. So it's just a little bit crazy. If you're looking for a new car, you may have to, be a little bit more flexible on what colors you're willing to accept. You may have to give up some of the options, because one of the things that the new car manufacturers are doing just to be able to spit out cars that the dealers can sell, if they can't get enough computer chips to put all of the technology-rich features in that car, they're pulling some of those features out. So a lot of the manufacturers, I was talking to one of my BMW dealers, they said one of the things that they're doing is options like the driver safety aids and some of the fancier technology that normally was standard in even their base model cars is not, they're pulling that out. So you just can't get that technology. They're now producing the car without those options. So you may have to be willing to give up some of the higher tech options to be able to get a new vehicle. And that's going to affect the resale value in a few years when you're ready to get out of that and then get back into something that you like better that does have those features. The resale value of that car will be lower. The residual value, if you're looking to lease that car, is going to be lower. They're going to have to make those adjustments because those technology features are so popular that it's going to be a little bit harder for them to resell that car, or for you to resell that car in 2, 3, 4 years down the line, when hopefully this crazy situation is resolved and we'll be back to normal with our high-tech cars. So those are some things you need to consider when you're thinking about shopping for a car. Now, on the flip side, the positive thing is you're going to be able to get a really great price for your trade, even if your trade is less than perfect. But if you have just a gently used trade, or maybe you want to or need to get out of your lease early, this is a great opportunity to get top dollar for that car. And the secret may be to sell it to a different dealer than you're buying the new or new to you car from. I'll give you a very concrete example. I had a client just last week, and she leased a Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. That's the four-door Wrangler back in 2019. It'd only been about a year and a half. She was less than 2 years into her lease, about a year and a half into her lease. And she really needed to get out of that car because she has 2 children and this giant, beautiful 130-pound Great Pyrenees dog. Well, her son is autistic and has a lot of anxieties, which have been going up over the last year. And she's okay with me sharing this because I'm not using any names, but her son is bonded to that dog. That dog is kind of his ground that calms him. And so they cannot travel now without the dog. And when you have 2 kids and a 130-pound dog and any amount of luggage, that takes up whatever cargo space you have. So the Jeep, especially with it being a soft top and she couldn't put racks and stuff on top of it, that car was no longer meeting their lifestyle needs. And so she wanted to get out of that lease early, which is normally a very difficult thing to do, especially for an American car and something like a Jeep that tend to have a higher depreciation in those first 2 years. And I was looking at the numbers and, looking at the book values and even talking to some of my Jeep dealers who would love to have that car for their lot. It was looking like she was going to be about $4,000 upside down on that car because she had rolled in some negative equity into the lease when she got it. So we were a little concerned because she wanted a larger vehicle, but didn't really want to increase her monthly payment. But we were looking at having potentially $4,000 negative equity. Well, we started looking at, let's see what Carvana and Vroom and some of these online companies, because they'll give you a quote just through the website. Now, whether they stick to that quote once they actually go through their review of your car and get more tangible information is debatable. But we figured, hey, we don't have anything to lose. And so Vroom came back and offered $35,000 for this car. We thought we were going to get 31, maybe 32 if we were going to be lucky. They came back with an offer of 35,000, and we're like, which is what she needed to get out of it. And we're like, okay, is this really going to hold true, or are they going to pull a bait and switch on us? And sure enough, they gave her that amount for that car, and they did it very, very quickly. And so she actually ended up putting about $100 in her pocket, and the rest they paid off the leasing company, and the whole thing was done in a little over a week. I was so impressed. Normally, that particular dealership does a lot of branded titles and cars that have had accidents on their records. They haven't had the quality of cars that they sell normally that I would touch with a 10-foot pole, but they're desperate. And so they literally offered her 35. The MSRP on the car brand new 2 years ago was only 40. I mean, it was crazy. So I don't know if they're going to sell that car at a loss. I need to go back to their inventory, although they've probably already sold it by now. But we were just shocked, but it worked to her advantage. So now she got out of her lease clean and we were able to start fresh. And I found her a ridiculously good lease deal on a brand new Toyota Highlander. She had to go with her third color choice of the car, but we jumped on it and we got it literally put the deal together in 24 hours, and she was able to go pick that car up on her birthday, ironically. So that was awesome. And now the 2 kids and the dog are very happy, and she's going to be able to do what their family needs to do. And her son and the dog are going to be perfectly happy. So it worked out in our favor that we were able to get such stupid high money for her trade. So normally if you've got dealers calling you saying, or sending you letters saying, hey, we'd love your trade, most of the time that's just a whole bunch of marketing hooey to get you to try and come into the dealership so they can sell you something. Right now, they're serious. They need your trade, unless your trade is a complete and total piece of junk. Although I was pleasantly surprised, another client of mine, we'd started the process of looking for a new car for her when her existing car was hit and totaled, but it was a very old, really super high mile little Nissan Versa. And I was only expecting if we were lucky to get a couple $100 for that thing. It really was on its last legs and had the value of a boat anchor. But her insurance company just called yesterday and they gave her $3,800 for that piece of junk. So we're like, woohoo! We just were able to add more money to her budget for the gently used car that we're looking to buy her. So even the insurance company, which shocked me because they normally go off their own book values, and I figured they might give her $1,000 for it, but we were so pleasantly surprised. So I don't recommend going out and wrecking your car, but negotiate with your insurance company if you do get into that situation, and make sure you tell them if you put new tires on it recently or had work done. Send them those receipts and they'll factor that in. And that did help this particular client because she'd done some work and put 4 brand new tires on the car. But I was still just doing the happy dance in my office chair when she told me that. So it's a great time to sell a car. It is not necessarily a great time to buy a car, but if you have to pay more for the car that you're buying, hopefully you're also getting top dollar for your trade. So it just kind of shifts the money and you end up with a similar deal. But you're going to have to shop around. You're going to have to really watch yourself in the finance office because the dealers are going to try and make up their profits on the add-ons, the finance products, the extended warranties, all that good stuff. And you're going to have to be careful about the quality of the car that you buy if you're looking used because it's going to be more and more challenging. So bottom line, all of 2021, because this inventory shortage is probably going to get worse before it gets better, and it will probably continue to plague us through the rest of this year, you're going to have to be a much more savvy buyer. It may take a lot more of your time, yet when you find a car, you're going to have to jump on it, and you may have to be more flexible in your parameters. You may have to be willing to order a car and wait for 3 or 4, maybe even 6 months for that new car to arrive, and it's just going to be more challenging. And I'm even adjusting my processes for my clients so that I can still get them the deals, but I'm also giving them a reality check at the beginning before they even decide to sign a contract with me. I'm like, look, here's what's going on. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Here are the challenges, and here's the strategies that we're going to take to face those challenges, but you need to be prepared. Is this something you want to do? So I'm crazy busy, but I want to share that information with all of you guys who might be looking at buying a car this year. It's just going to be a little bit more challenging, but we always rise to the challenge. That's what we do. And I hope that everybody continues to stay safe and healthy. And until next time, I'm out of here. Drive safely.
The Straight Shift Podcast is copyright Leanne Shattuck, The Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of Leanne Shattuck or The Car Chick.